All right, everyone. Batman Arkham series was an absolute hit. A fantastic trilogy, perhaps the best superhero trilogy of all time. Well, team, how should we follow that up, huh? What should we do next? Oh, what if we do another DC hero next? Maybe like The Flash or even like a good Superman game? Okay, that's a pretty damn good idea. Anyone else? A shooter! Well, I mean, we kind of have the DC IP in our pocket. That doesn't make a shooter. Kids nowadays like shooters with guns. And they get them from like loot boxes that go boosh and wow. And it's fucking lit. Thanks, WB. But I don't think that would go over. More loot boxes, more live service. Play our games more, forever and ever. Please, please, please play our games forever. Hello everyone, welcome to the Troy Sturdy channel. I'm Troy, and today I'm going to talk about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. You couldn't already tell, I very much enjoyed Rocksteady's Batman trilogy. In my opinion, it's the best superhero game series of all time. So far, we will see how Spider-Man can follow up. So when they announced a Suicide Squad game, I was initially pretty excited. But then after looking at gameplay and finding out it was a live service looter shooter, yeah, I was skeptical like everyone else. But I wanted to give the game a fair shot. I'm coming in with an open mind. I had to try it for myself. Rocksteady, they're a great developer. Surely they can't fuck it up too bad. Can they? Can they? Please. And before we go any further, I'd like to go ahead and self-plug. If you enjoyed the video and my little intro skit there, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I love video games, so I'm always reviewing them and talking about what I'm currently playing. I also play them live on stream, so go ahead and hit that sub for me. Come join the fun. Thank you so much. So yes, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. From here on out, I'm just referring to it as Suicide Squad. That name is way too damn long. Let's go ahead and talk about it. In my reviews, I like to give a spoiler-free synopsis of the game and its overall framework and gameplay loop. Spoiler-free from any specific story beats, but I will be showing some late game footage and boss fights in order to reinforce some points. Then I'll break down what I thought was good and then what I thought was, well, ass. And yeah, to get it out up front, for me, Suicide Squad isn't great. It's disappointing. And it's just plain boring. So, without further ado, let's dive into Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Last time I'm saying that, promise. Or I can't promise that.
You think you're a team now?
You think you can stop us?
Thought you'd never ask.
Pick and choose, sit and lose, all you different crews. Chicks and dudes, who you think is really chicken too?
He's the fastest man alive, according to all these girlfriends.
So, in Suicide Squad, you assume the role of the 4 characters in the squad, being able to freely swap between any members between missions. These being Harley Quinn, King Shark, Deadshot, and Captain Boomerang. The squad is dropped into Metropolis City and tasked with stopping the apocalyptic invasion initiated by Brainiac, who has not only completely overran the city, but also has mind control of the Justice League, hence the Kill the Justice League part. The main meat of the gameplay has you running around Metropolis from mission to mission, blasting away at Brainiac's troops. Completing these missions grants you rewards and XP and loot via everyone's favorite method, loot boxes. Woo!
Bargains be bargains. When there's profit involved, come see me when you're ready.
Ooh, loot box. Oh my god, yes. Health kick, woohoo. And you use this to progress your character with weapons, augments, and new skills. And that's fucking it. Yeah, that's kind of all you do. There's no real side activities outside of these little Riddler quests, but these side missions are just the same kill Brainiac's troops. So before I go too hard on this game, let's go ahead and start with what I thought was good about Suicide Squad. What worked. And some of the basic fundamentals here are actually really solid. For one, I really enjoyed the traversal, and I really appreciated the different traversal mechanics between each character. You see, each member of the Suicide Squad has a very different way of moving around. Deadshot has a jetpack, King Shark sort of pounces around like a beast. Harley Quinn will swing and zip around like Spider-Man or Batman. And Captain Boomerang, my personal favorite, will throw his boomerang, then essentially teleport to it. Boomerang specifically was just so fun and satisfying to use and to get the hang of. And this adds variety and depth to not only the traversal, but also combat. And speaking of combat, again, the fundamentals here I really enjoyed. It's very arcadey in a good way. You'll be mostly shooting enemies with guns, but using melee can either create openings or initiate finishers that recharge your shield. So you'll be swapping back and forth between melee and ranged attacks pretty frequently. And this pairs really nicely with the great traversal as you sort of zip around and engage or disengage with enemies. And it can be tough to get into, but you do sort of drop into this rhythm or flow of combat that can be very satisfying. And there's other little mechanics that support this, such as a combo counter that increases or decreases depending on how well you're doing. So there are some nice synergies and mechanics working together here. And the shooting itself is also tight. It definitely feels responsive and well made. And my final point in the good category is I'd like to say, well, technically the game works very well. I had a few minor bugs with like desynced voices during a cutscene, but I never had a crash and the game feels polished. I can tell that Suicide Squad had a good hefty budget. The animations are all very fluid and natural. The facial animations in particular are top notch. The graphics overall are pretty good and the game ran great. And that's about it. For the positive, that's pretty much all that I really liked. Now let's talk about what I think didn't work, which unfortunately is almost everything surrounding the solid fundamentals the combat and traversal lay down. I think my number one largest issue with the game is the enemies. Man, this is some of the most generic, boring enemy design I have ever seen. Sure, there are technically different types like a sniper and a charger, but visually they're almost indistinguishable. Their models just look the same and their design is like wiry and odd. It doesn't help that the game is like visually cluttered with UI and damage numbers and ammo drops and all types of shit just popping up in your face. But wait, not only do you have boring enemies to fight, you have boring areas to fight them in. The map in general is just weird. Like sure, Metropolis visually is nice and detailed, but 90% of the time you're just on the rooftops. And sure, you can fight them on the ground, then the enemies are always on the rooftops. So this puts you at a huge disadvantage, so why would you do that? The game is obviously designed around the characters to be traversing and fighting on rooftops. And when you're up there, so much just looks and feels the same. There are only like a handful of major landmarks, but you aren't exploring or discovering anything noteworthy in this open world. There are no real moments where you go, wow, this is a cool location. So yes, there are some cool combat mechanics, but you're using them to fight the same boring enemies for the 100th time. And yes, there are some good traversal mechanics, but you're using it to go across the same boring map for the 1000th time. You can see that Suicide Squad is just boring. You're always fighting the same boring enemies on the same boring rooftops over and over again. Once the newness of the combat and traversal wore off in a few hours, I was very quickly bored. Which for me, being boring is like the greatest sin a video game can commit. Video games are supposed to be the opposite of boring. Especially a live service looter shooter, this shit needs to hook you. The somewhat interesting mechanics of combat and traversal are not nearly enough. Well, maybe the bosses are at least cool. I mean, with a title like Kill the Justice League, we have to know who we are fighting, right? That has to be badass. Well, they are a step up from the awful enemy design, but overall, they also kind of suck. There are some tense moments, sure, but for the most part, the bosses are just like this little person zipping around this huge arena. You never truly get to feel like you're having this epic upfront confrontation with these characters. Except for maybe Batman, it starts decent enough with a horror section, but then devolves into this monster fight. It's just odd. Just take a look. Does this feel like how you'd fight Batman?
Criminal scum. I reckon he's looking worse. But he did already look pretty.
So yeah, most of the boss fights, you're just blasting away at this little figure in the distance while they throw a bunch of shit at you. Like you have these DC characters that everyone knows and loves, but because of how the game is designed, the camera is just so far back. You never really get personal with anyone during the action. Compare this to the Batman games, where you get to see Batman just breaking fucking arms and it's visceral. Here you're just shooting at these little purple pimples. Wow, fun. Okay, well, what about the loot? That's another key part of a looter shooter, right? Well, I'll say that it's not quite as boring as like the map and the enemies, but it's not great. It's lackluster. There are a handful of interesting gun effects here, like ones that can heal you or open up enemies to certain types of damage. But in the end, it's not enough, and the loot can feel boring too. Rarely did I get a weapon and go, wow, this is great. I'm so excited to use this. Again, maybe it's because the camera is like so far pulled back, you don't really properly see or feel the guns. And I better not be here at, oh, you gotta wait till hour blah 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 and get this weapon. I played this game for 15 hours. If it's not good yet, it's shitty. Your skill progression is also weird. Skills are grouped into 3 columns, in which column you get a skill point for, like rotates each level. So you move horizontally across these skill columns, then within each level you sometimes have options, but then you're sometimes forced to pick a specific skill. Once you kind of get the gist, it makes sense, but I just don't understand why they didn't design it more intuitively. The way it's designed makes you feel pigeonholed. Now the story itself isn't awful, but it's not great either. Again, it's just mediocre. So for me, that is a negative. I'd say it starts strong, then ends in a bad spot and feels rushed. It's very predictable. I mean, it's in the fucking name of the game. I know some people are upset about the whole killing the Justice League thing. I don't care about that. This is superheroes. They always retcon or bring some bullshit back. I will say how some of them go out is pretty fucking lame, and it was a bummer. It's also relatively short. The main missions took me about 10 hours to complete. And that's not necessarily bad, but if it's gonna be shorter, it better be good. And here it's meh. And Suicide Squad tries hard to be funny and lands maybe like 40% of the time, which really isn't that bad. It did get a few chuckles out of me. Sometimes they ham-fist jokes at you so often in like weird, inappropriate times. Almost too much. The characters themselves don't really have any character progression. Some of them have a bit of backstory, but it's just flat and uninteresting. I will say there is a thread with Wonder Woman that is interesting, but that fizzles out like halfway through. The dialogue and chemistry between the group and the voice acting for the most part was pretty solid, but it's not enough to carry a lackluster story that just falls flat in the end. The side content is laughable. I mean, there really isn't any. The Riddler stuff isn't bad, but it feels a bit out of place in this type of game. Then there are just little side missions that rotate between literally the same 3 things. Defend plants, go save civilians, and put them onto a fucking Fortnite battle bus. And I don't know, I can't even remember what the third was. It was so forgettable. I think it's like an escort mission. Oh, and the Endgame, guess what? It's those same 3 side missions again. That's it. There is a bit of a horde mode that I kind of appreciate, but that runs stale too. You're just fighting the same fucking purple pimple enemies. The same missions, the same enemies over and over and over, and then you can eventually fight the big boss, who, guess what, has pretty much the same moveset as another boss. Fucking ridiculous. What the fuck? No amount of cool build variety or loot makes this absolutely boring endgame grind worth it. And how they introduce the endgame is just so eye-rolling. They literally get excited about how they can just shoot bad guys forever. I mean, just check it out. It's spoiler-free, but it's fucking dumb.
Your fight is far from over. We get to keep killing him over and over. 13 times the payback. An eternal conflict.
This is beautiful, Lexi. We get to fly around the city doing acrobatic shit.
So, in conclusion, Suicide Squad. You can see so much of this game is odd and doesn't make sense, which actually makes perfect sense when a studio that developed some of the best superhero single-player experiences is forced to make a live-action looter shooter. So with that, I'm giving Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League a 4 out of 10. It's got some flashes of greatness in the fundamentals of combat and traversal, but literally everything else around that is just either painfully mid or mediocre, depending on how old you are, or just flat out bad. And Suicide Squad commits the worst sin of all, being repetitive and boring. Boring enemies, boring map design, boring loot, boring side activities and mission design, disappointing boss fights and story beats. You've essentially seen all the gameplay there is within the first 4 hours. You'll be doing the same things over and over again, doing the same missions, fighting the same fucking enemies on the same fucking rooftops. And I don't care if it's a live service game. Games need to come out of the gate good, especially if they are asking full price up front. Make it free if you're gonna lack variety of content here. That's it. Honestly, this game feels like a free-to-play game, but it's $70 fucking dollars. Save your money, go play Borderlands game, or if it's a superhero game you want, go play Rocksteady's Batman. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and my review of Suicide Squad. If you did, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments below. What do you think of Suicide Squad? Are you having fun? I know there's people out there enjoying the game. All the power to you. Like there's people that are really either huge DC fans or just really enjoy this looter shooter formula, even if it's painfully mediocre. Must be a loot box gambling edition. You know, I'm picky with my looter shooters. I like really good ones, like obviously Borderlands, and I did play Destiny 2 for a bit. Anyways, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.